They range from, I'll just kind of abbreviate, they range from, the lessons I learned. So here's Martha saying, oh, whoops, I learned the hard way that you need to unlock the garage door before you push the button. Um, there was one where someone was seriously hurt and hospitalized while testing a garage door. He caught the garage door with his hands. He didn't describe the how he was entrapped, but he ended up unable to call 911 himself. Had to get someone else to call 911. He was taken immediately to the hospital, and where he was immediately went into surgery. So that's a home inspector damaged, uh, uh, injured while testing a garage door. Um, and then I shared a number of very similar stories, and that's what kind of brings us to where we are now. There was over and over, I got this home inspectors telling me, and me sharing this with Desma, this experience. And in a nutshell, it goes like this. I started out at the beginning of my career, whether that was 6 months ago or 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I started my career doing what I was trained to do. So in some cases, I was trained to catch it with my hands, and stop the door in motion to get it to reverse. And others, they were taught to run it down on a 2x4 block, and when it hits that 2x4 block, it's supposed to stop, reverse itself, and open all the way back up. So over and over, the story I got was, um, I did what I was taught to do, and with the result being, I damaged a couple of doors and learned the lesson the hard way that doing what I was doing was unsafe. It was costing me money because people were expecting me to um, pay for the damaged door. And so I changed. So some people changed from catching it with their hands and to running it down onto a 2x4. And some people started with running it down to a 2x4 and it's changed to grabbing it with their hands. And in most cases, people were saying, and now that I've changed, I haven't damaged a door since. And yet it's kind of weird because some people were going from one to the other and the other going from the other to the one. And so once they made the change, that solved the problem. So what I realize is that my sample is too small to get to gather any meaningful information. Right? I just don't have enough a representative sample to really consider that a meaningful uh, poll, I guess you'd say.
All right, can you hear me?
We hear you.
Well, I inspect the garage doors very thoroughly and test as many aspects of it as I can during the inspection. And I've never really had a problem except one time when the it was one of these styrofoam doors with, I guess, plastic skin. And I did the 2x4 test and I didn't check the downward force or anything first. And the downward force was excessive, and the uh, downward force was sufficient to self-destruct the um, I guess the upper panel of the uh, garage door opener where the actuator attaches to it, just basically broke that section of the door because the material was just too weak. It couldn't even stop the actuator from
Hey, so
operating.
Dan, let me ask you. You said that you didn't test for what? For the force?
Excess downward force. I usually
Excess
test.
downward force. So how would you have tested for that, or do you do a test for that now?
Yeah, I test by hand. I, uh, when the garage door is closing, I put my hand, I grab the bottom of the door and see if I'm able to stop it from closing and roughly how much force it takes. If it takes just a light amount of force, which is what it should be, or if it takes so much force, like I feel like I'm in the gym lifting weights, I note that as excessive. Or if it's so strong, I can't cause it to stop closing, no matter how hard I resist, I consider that a life safety hazard and report that. So that's how I test that. But testing with the 2x4 is a different test. It's testing whether the door is closing at the right, is able to detect a person's arm or leg or whatever at the right location at the bottom. And that's different from the mounted downward force test. That's a closing. Um,
Okay, so when I brought this up with DASMA, they're telling me that in their protocol, there is no downward force test. It's simply when it when the door stops, the motor recognizes a stall and it automatically reverses itself. And there is no downward force test. Now, I'm not saying you're wrong because that's what we're here to discuss. I want to know what other people are thinking about that. So let's do this. You can put your hand back up, but for right now, everybody who has their hand up, please put it down. And I want to talk about only about the downward force because that topic, Dan just put that topic on the table. So if you have some comment about downward force testing for that, JT, we're gonna let you go first.
Thanks, Hollis. Yeah, I used to do the same thing Dan did, and I broke a door doing that. So I don't do that anymore.
Okay, so
Uh,
by the way Dan does it, what do you mean? Because he said he did it two different ways. Say,
Grabbing,
tell us
putting my fingers underneath the door and catching it on the way down.
about waist height.
Yeah, just about waist height.
Yeah.
And now whether the door itself had an issue before that, I don't think so. But it destroyed the mechanism at the top of the door where all of these where the door and the bar connect.
Okay.
So it pulled it apart there. So
Okay. So remember
I don't
specifically what
test
we're
that anymore.
You don't do that anymore. Okay.
I don't do
Specifically, the topic, we just changed the topic now. The specific topic right now is downward force, is testing for downward force. What is your understanding? Does anybody have a number, some number that they've been taught, that they read somewhere? How do we determine? Yeah, because what Dan said was, well, if I feel like I'm working out in the gym, well, that's not a very technical definition of an acceptable amount of downward force. So if you once you've spoken, if you turn your put your hand back down so that we know. Jim, I'm going to let
Yeah, there
you
you go.
weigh in. Jim Camp, let's let you. Oh, did you just turn yours off?
Yeah.
Jeff Emmett, let's hear what
Oh,
you've got to say.
I just,
Oh,
okay.
Jim, go ahead. Jim Camp.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I tested with my hand. I have never, ever, ever tested it with the 2x4 because I've heard of all these other stories about ruining the door. But when I do that, I just and I hold it. I have about a certain amount of force that I know that I should hold it at, and I just let it go. If I start hearing the motor stalling, I just let it go, but I just put it in my report that it did not do the auto reverse, and it's up to them to make the decision if they want to do or an adjustment on that or not for the downward force on that. So, but I hold it. I don't use a 2x4.
Okay, so when you say you hold it, what I'm trying to get at is like how hard are people holding it? So specifically, I'm asking for when I check the door, I'm asking myself, is this excessive force? What is the test you're doing for that? Pat LaRoe, you're next.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like Jim, I've always been testing it with my hand. I've never used a 2x4, nothing like that. When I'm doing it, I'm looking to see what kind of force, and it's hard to describe really. Um, I I know how much it's going to take for it to go back. I've heard that probably it's been a few years now, but there was a child that was running out from underneath of the garage doors. It was closing, and it came down and unfortunately the child did not make it. And that's what I go by. It shouldn't take that much force to send that door back up. I cannot tell if that door is going to go back up and how much force it's going to take to send that door back up using a 2x4 at the bottom. With my hand, I can tell, but I always just give it enough leeway to where it's not going to damage it. But honestly, I have damaged 2 doors. And I never got a phone call, never insurance, nothing ever came out of it. The doors were damaged with, testing it, and this is what the deal is. And the owners had to get it fixed. One of the doors, the mechanism up on top coming down, the control arm coming down that was attached to the top of the garage door was actually only held together with drywall screws. So, and that was not proper installation. So it failed.
All right, Jeff Emmett, you're next.
Yeah, so I used to do this, and I damaged a door, and so of course they were wanting me to replace the door, and I said, it was, and I noted it was a defect, but so just the amount of force that I held with my hand was too much for it, and it sort of buckled at the top, and the metal hardware at the top kind of bent, and so when I returned the door to the fully closed position, there was just a slight gap, and you could see daylight there. So yeah, they wanted me to replace the door, but I just said, hey, there's a defect there, and it's a safety issue. But because of that, I don't do it anymore. I have just a sort of a limitation or an objection that I put in my report to say that I'm not going to do this because it could damage the door.
I do that too, Hollis.
Yeah.
Sort of
Okay.
yeah.
So interestingly, while I was at DASMA, talking to the people who wrote the protocol that says nothing about downward force and requires the use of a 2x4 block. When I told them that home inspectors are having these experiences where they're afraid of damaging doors, they're changing their protocol because of their concern about damaging the door. One of the attendees there suggested that we've got it. We're not looking at it correctly. We're not seeing it the way they see it. So if you think about it, what they're doing, they recognize. Now this is me talking, not them, but I think they recognize that they manufacture a dangerous product. So they've gone out of their way to write protocols for installations and protocols for inspection and testing. And now they're wanting to go out there and promote these protocols, get things done the way they think they ought to be done. So when I pointed out that we're coming up with our own protocols, each one of us, and that's what you guys have been talking about. I damaged the door, therefore I do this other thing, whatever that, even if it is, I'm writing something in my report rather than testing it. We're doing something different other than the test. Then their response was, well, it seems like you're missing the point, because if it damaged the door, that means it was improperly installed and you found the problem. You did what you were hired to do, which was to discover that it's improperly installed. That it being damaged by that test is evidence of the improper installation. And so by deviating from that, what you are doing is making decisions based on your own short-term financial interest rather than concern for the safety of the child that might be trapped under the door. So, Mark Lunder, why don't you go next?
All right. Thanks, Hollis. So I had an instance, just like many others, where I caused the top panel of the door to fold because I grabbed it with my hand, doing what we all have done, just feeling it. But the sellers on this property happen to both be lawyers, and they would not accept that I found a defect, and that I argued it with them that it was a pre-existing condition, and testing it revealed the defect. And so they demanded my insurance and contacted my insurance, and my insurance ended up just paying for the repair. They told me I didn't think I did anything wrong, but it was cheaper and easier just to settle it and pay for the door to be replaced than to fight them on it. But with that, I realized that I didn't have, to Hollis's point, any kind of standard to go off of, right? How are we testing these things? So then I started looking into installation instructions, requirements within garage door manufacturers for the motors. And I started noticing on inspections, I don't know if you guys know this, or if I'm sure many of us have replaced garage door motors ourselves, but most of them come with stickers that you're supposed to place near the button or on the door. And they all talk about how to test them. And it talks about it in the instructions as well. And I even now include in my report a stock image of these stickers, but I've got one pulled up on my screen, and it says to test it monthly and to place a 1-inch object or a 2x4 laid flat on the floor. And if the door fails to reverse on contact, that it needs repair or adjustment. So that is why I have transitioned away from holding a door to using the 2x4 method, because when you really dig into the literature, that is the correct way to test the auto reverse. Now, as far as like downward force or pressure, to Hollis's point again, how do you measure that? What kind of standard? You'd have to use a force gauge. We're not doing that, right? That's the concern with force crushing a child. In my opinion, that is addressed with the photo eyes, right? And that's why the photo eyes have to be within 6 inches of the floor. I can't imagine any child that would not cause those photosensors, the view to be obstructed, when they're that close to the floor. If they're crawling, if they're laying down, if they're walking, if those are doing their job, which should be part of your inspection procedure to test those as well, and to make sure they're within 6 inches of the floor, then in my opinion, that would suffice.
Okay, so Ian, thank you. You mentioned insurance, so let me say, I've been talking to a lot of people the last week since coming back from Cleveland, and some of you know that because I've called you on the phone. One of those conversations, somebody told me that about 10 years ago they got a call from, or I think it was a multi-inspector firm, where the insurance company informed them, instructed them, or requested that I don't remember exactly what the language was, but they were advised that to stop doing that resistance test. And I guess because they were concerned about all the doors that they were paying for. So it's interesting you're saying that the insurance company told you didn't do anything wrong, but they went ahead and settled it by paying for the door. So here's what I'm going to ask everybody: put your hands down. Put your hands down, and I'm just going to ask people to raise your hand in response to this question. Does anybody have information about what your insurance company has told you? So raise your hand if your insurance company has told you something about this. So Kenneth Logan, why don't you go first? What did your insurance company tell you?
I don't remember the exact wording. This has been about 10 years ago. Again, I was testing the door with my hand, and the door just almost like crumbled in my hand. Everything that everybody else has said is at the same point at the connection where the bracket connects to the door. That's where it started. I gave the homeowner my insurance, which was travelers general liability. he called Travelers General Liability, and they just refused to pay the claim. I can't remember what they told me though. All I know is they did not paying the claim. I think they wanted to say something to the effect that what I did was within the realm and the scope of my testing. In other words, I didn't do anything. There was no negligence or any kind of something that I did. It was within the scope of my testing. There was no negligence, or what's the other word I'm looking for? What's the other word that's often used when someone damaged something? I can't think of that other word.
Liability.
Huh?
Liability.
Negligence.
Oh yeah, negligence. Yeah, that's it. Negligence. There was no negligence or anything like that on my part. I was just
Okay.
I was just doing my job. That was it.
So your insurance company pushed back. Good for them. Good.
Yeah.
That's what I look at it. Good for them.
Travelers would not pay it.
And the owners then backed down after the insurance company wouldn't pay. They didn't come after you.
No, they didn't. They didn't. Matter of fact, I went out to the house. I went to the homeowner because I think he and I was very upfront with him. I wanted him to know because I did the inspection. Of course, because as you well know, the homeowners are not present at the time of the home inspection, right? So he comes home and his garage door looked like a tin can crushed. So of course he's upset, and he calls me. And I told him, I said, listen, sir, I want to meet you face to face, man to man. I don't want you to think I'm some kind of guy out here trying to avoid you. I want to meet with you and talk to you, describe to you what happened. So you don't think, I'm just trying to get out of something. And so that's what I did. I met with the homeowner, he and his wife, and I described to him what I did, how I reached my hand out, and how his garage door just bent and crumbled in my hand. So he asked me for my general liability. I was happy to give it to him. I wanted to let him know I had nothing to hide. Here's everything. Call him. Help yourself. And he took it. He took it and called Travelers, and Travelers said no, he didn't do anything out of the scope in the realm of his inspection. There was no negligence or anything like that.
Right. Good enough. Thank you. Mark Lundner. Mark, you got your microphone on?
Yeah, it was good.
There you go.
First time. I was having lunch with an insurance agent years ago.
Mark, speak up a little bit.
I was having lunch with an insurance agent years ago, and he was savvy about this garage door thing, and he asked me what I did. And I said, well, I used to grab the door on the way down to see if it reversed. That was testing object resistance, okay? And then I also tested the electronic auto reverse. Well, then the question came up is I'd heard, and there were conversations about using your hand instead of, but the door manufacturers recommended the 2x4 test. That's an object. Does the object cause the door refresh? And does the electronic reverse does it? Okay. And he said, well, why on earth, as a home inspector with potential liability, after hearing that, why would you try to test the reverse force, which the industry states there is no test for, and that's what they require? Just do the 2x4. If you want to do both, do the 2x4 and the electronic reverse. He said, if the door's coming down too hard, and it's pushing someone down or something, they're probably going to push them down, and then the automatic reverse is going to do it anyway. He says, just do the 2x4 and or the electronic, but don't do anything else, because then you're going to have problems if you come back here and we've got an insurance claim, because if you broke the door other than the 2x4 test, you might have bought the door. So I don't.
Well, I like the argument that says I was just following the protocol. I did what I'm required to do, and if it damaged the door, I found the defect. But I also know that that's an awful hard position to take when when you want to be responsible. You want to take responsibility. I don't want to run away from things. I like the way Ken was saying. He met the guy face to face. He mano a mano. Lou, why don't you go next? Lou Scarbo.
A question on my end is if there's not a standard for downward force, what kind of standard would they use to measure sensitivity on for the resistance on what it would take to reverse the door pattern? Is there a standard there?
Not in the DASMA testing protocol.
You
The
said
downward-
earlier.
Hollis?
If I can, Lou, it's almost certain that the factory, as they're building these things, they're measuring the current on a stall on that end, on the motor. That's what they're setting it from.
Yeah.
It's not something you can do on the field.
Oh, that's Jim Vaughn. Why don't you go next?
I was just you're talking about downward force, and that's what it says right on the operator, down force. Every operator I've ever seen, there's a knob you can turn, or you can put a screwdriver in there and adjust down force.
The what?
Down force.
So there are two knobs back there. One's the downward force, and the other is the distance, right?
Travel.
Travel. Yeah. Adam Wood. Adam Wood.
Thank you. I wanted to make sure that we actually had a chance to read what the Virginia code says.
Go for it.
Yep. So bear with me as I read this. It's pretty short. It says garage doors are permanently mounted and installed garage door openers. The automatic safety reverse function of a garage door openers must be tested either by physical obstruction as specified by the manufacturer or by breaking the beam of the electronic photo eye, but only when the test can be safely performed and will not risk damage to the door, the opener,
so
any nearby structure, or any stored items.
So what you're reading is the license law, right? Is the home inspector license regulation?
Correct.
What we're required to do to test
This
them.
is
Yeah.
under 18 VAC 15-40-130 home inspection report.
Right.
Yep. So I think that part is, to me, would make me nervous if we're performing a test that goes against that clause of and will not risk damage to the door, because we know that the 2x4 test, while appropriate by the manufacturer, does risk damage to the door.
Well, so does catching it with your hand. Both of them risk damaging the door.
Correct. So by Virginia code, I would argue that we're in a bad position of doing either one, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
But it allowed in that, in what you read, that testing that did satisfy to use the electronic eye to
Correct. That using or breaking the electronic eye is a satisfactory test for that. But
satisfactory according to that regulation, but satisfactory according to common sense or according to the specialists or the experts or the manufacturers, we have a different definition of satisfactory, don't we?
Yeah, two different tests, Hollis. Two different tests.
Yeah, there are two different tests. So one of the arguments, like I said, I've been talking to people, and one of the points was made that somebody told me, he said, I've been pondering this for a couple of years myself. And what he said was, I'm trying to imagine a way for a child to get injured if the electric eyes are properly installed and properly located. So if you test it by breaking the beam of the electric eye, you really have, according to this theory, you really have provided the protection against personal injury.
Okay. When you were talking to Desma, did you even mention the Consumer Product Safety Commission? Because for all the years that ASHI has been doing any kind of seminars or anything, that's the agency that they always referenced. And I was wondering if you mentioned to that, and that they always mention using the 2x4 for testing. And also in earlier, you mentioned that DASMA said that their protocol for testing was, did it reverse within 2 seconds? So it may not be a force issue, it may be a time issue. And, you know, time is an element of force in some regards. So, you know, I just wanted to throw those two things out, ask you about the Consumer Product Safety Commission and use the 2-second rule and see if any of those shed any light on the issue. Well, you didn't answer my question.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was your question? I'm sorry. No, I did not. No, I did not bring that up with them.
Okay. Okay.
Right. It's just important to understand that there are two completely separate mechanisms in play here. One is the electric eye, and that is the encroachment reversal. In other words, the door's on the way down, the electric eye is broken by anything, the door should reverse. No question of doubt. The obstruction safety reversal is primarily there to save cars from being crushed or doors from being broken because they hit a car that was stuck in the door, that was neither in nor out, or a person, or anything else that happens to be on the ground in the garage that is obstructing the door from closing. Two completely separate tests, two completely separate purposes. And I don't see how we can test the obstruction reversal without obstructing the door. And I think the experience that we've heard that we've heard about here tonight and heard about for years, for that matter, is obstructing the door is very much risking breaking the door if that obstruction mechanism is not working, hasn't been set correctly, actually.
Charlie
That's why the
Roskowski.
manufacturer says that you use a 2x4 flat, because if it won't reverse in an obstruction, that little 1 inch or 1.5 inches won't damage the door. If you use a cinder block or your hand held up high, then you risk damaging the door. If it's down low, that's the only logic, and that's the reason that they say use a 2x4 flat.
Yeah,
It
but
won't
it's
work,
but
you
it's
know, the
but it's
floors
untrue,
will
Mark. It's untrue. We know from the inspectors that just the inspectors that Hollis has been talking about, they were using a 2x4 and broke doors.
Well, the manufacturer
Okay,
tells you to do
guys,
it.
let's not get involved in cross talk here. Let's keep some organization here. Charlie Roskowski.
Paulus, we've been doing this a long time, and we were doing it before the days of the beam. And prior to that, you had to have some type of device to govern whether those doors were coming down too hard to compress something, and there wasn't no beam to stop it. I've used a roll of paper towels and governed it by the count of 1001, 1002, and if it completely compressed that, it was done. And I did that for years. And that's all I've ever used is a roll of paper towels from Sam's, the heavy duty blue ones. So that's all I got.
Yeah, along those lines, I talked to a guy. Actually, he was in a class where somebody said that exact same thing. I use a roll of paper towels. Another guy raised his hand. And he says, "Well, I use a beer can." He says, "I put a beer can under there, and if the door hits the beer can, it should stop and reverse itself. But if it doesn't reverse, it will crush the can rather than damage the door." I said, "Well, that's a good idea. Do you have enough beer cans?" He says, "Oh yeah, I got plenty of beer cans."
There was a home inspector years ago that used a baby doll. So he carried a baby doll around with him, and he would throw the baby doll down under the door and see if the door reversed. I always thought that was kind of interesting. But anyway,
He makes the point, doesn't he?
Yeah, he made the point.
It'd be a good photo to justify in your report.
Absolutely. Yeah, I with the old garage doors, the wooden garage doors, I would put my hand under them and make sure they reversed and disconnect them and make sure they stayed where they were. And I did all that. And then with the metal doors, when they started coming out, I think I damaged 3. I never had to pay for any of those, but I damaged 3. And it was like, I'm going to stop doing any pressure test on a metal garage door. So sitting on the VARI board and having to do a lot with the specifications, the one that the gentleman just referenced, garage doors, we only have to check one thing. And for years, at least 15 years now, I check just the photo eye. And I tell the client there's two ways, pressure and photo eye. I will check the photo eye. I will not check the pressure because there's a high probability that I could damage that door. And then to back it up, under Virginia standards, I do not have to do that if I feel it's going to damage the door. And then if you look at the ASHI standards of practice, 12.2 C4, I am not required to operate automatic safety controls. So I am covered if anything happens by doing the one photo eye. I don't have to test the pressure, and I'm covered by both ASHI and Virginia standards if I don't do the pressure. And I don't have to worry about damaging doors.
Okay, so here are the answers. Afraid to damage it. Check for safety. I check for pressure and photo eyes. I live in Southern Maryland. One of my agents knew the family of a child who died in 2013 in the garage door accident. Both generally accepted methods of testing the obstruction reversal are known to damage doors under test. So I don't damage it again. I don't test the pressure anymore because I had damaged a garage door in the past. I test the electric eye if present, and I have a disclaimer in my report that I did not pressure test downward force. Photo eye only, had 3 door problems in 39 years. Industry standard practice to assure the safety of the family. Training for safety of people in vehicles. It specified NBY, many manufacturers, and the CPSC. What's NBY? I check with my pinky fingers and sensors. I test per manufacturer's instructions, simple, no liability. Safety issues have been tested. To avoid damage a door due to resistance. Damage a door trying to stop it with my hand. Manufacturer recommendation, I may stop now and do the laser beam only and no more contact safety reversal. So I'm thinking that this is somebody who is listening to our discussion and rethinking based on what he heard tonight. Industry standard test or per the manufacturer's safety sticker protocol. To avoid damage to the doors and avoid issue with the sellers. I only do electric eye test unless not present, then I use a plastic coffee can. Don't want to cause damage. I inspect Baltimore City apartments, so this is not part of my inspection. Roll of paper towels upon compression, I perform a 2 count. Testing the electric photo eye only. I have damaged a couple doors doing pressure test. 2 damaged. I do the electric eye, but not the 2 before. I do have a several sentence recommendation. I have tested by a garage door installer. It is important to have it tested and adjusted as needed. I follow the DASMA protocol. When I do residential inspection, which is rare, I do mostly commercial. Duty to protect client. I want to feel the downward pressure reverse to prevent damage to the door. If it does not stop, an auto reverse. Furthermore, if the door is made of metal, I do not test with resistance. If use safety sensors only, as like most inspectors have broken a door with a 2x4 test. Before the sensors, I used a 4x4 diameter foam noodle. So let's go back to our conversation now that we've seen that. Patrick Faust, why don't you go next?
All right. So the way I was taught to perform the impact test was with my foot. You step up with the foot over the eye and you just let it hit your foot. If it knocks your foot back, you pull your foot back across the photo eye and the door goes up and it failed the test. If it hits your foot and goes up on its own, then it passed. Either way, the door stops coming down, so nothing's going to get damaged.
Shane McClung.
Except your foot.
That's right.
Well, he's getting his foot out before it hits the floor.
Yeah, it goes my foot as soon as it pushes my foot down, my foot goes back across the photo eye. And I've already tested that the photo eye works before I performed that test.
So you
Shane,
called me? Yep.
Shane.
So we've been talking about all this, right? And here's a reverse question that I have on it. How many people have gotten complaints or claims against them for not testing the reversing from the pressure? Because we've had complaints and insurance claims and things like this from testing and having damage. But how many people have gotten any kind of issue from not testing?
Never.
Well, I had a situation. I might have told this story 2 months ago, right? Where I recognized that the door was improperly installed. I refused to test it. The agent pushed the button, opened it, closed it, and the very next time after the people bought the house, when they went to move in, they pushed the button and the door fell off the track.
Hey, Hollis, if he put a disclaimer in there to have a installing company, a qualified installing company to test it because of potential damage, that covers you on liability.
So I keep hearing this sentence that covers it. And I said I'm covered. I'm covered if I yada yada, whatever it is. One of the people that I said I've been talking to a lot of people. One of the people that I talked to was a real estate agent. No, I actually talked to the client. The client overheard me talking to the real estate agent, and I was talking about the part about the where the insurance company told the inspectors to stop testing the door. Stop testing the garage door. She said, "Yeah, I had the same thing. We had this swimming pool that we had decided we didn't want. We bought the house. We had the insurance agent come out because we wanted to buy insurance, but we also had already decided we were going to remove the swimming pool. So in passing, we told they told the insurance agent, we're gonna remove the swimming pool, and he said, no, you've got coverage for it." And they said, "No, we have a child and we're afraid we're concerned about our child." And he said, but that's okay. You've got coverage. Yeah, and no, we're concerned about the well-being of our child. And the agent couldn't get past, yeah, but you have coverage. It's okay.
Well, I had to pay for a door $700 and something, and I am not going to pay for another door.
I think we can all relate to that, can't we? No, you're not getting much argument about that. Lou, what do you got?
Yeah, I just texted an installer I know if he knew how much resistance is built into the operators, and in his opinion, it was 25 to 40 pounds. Though he didn't indicate if they have a special device that measures that.
10 pounds was the number that somebody threw out the other day, but he couldn't really quote his source.
Yeah. Over this weekend, I'm going to experiment with a foam swimming noodle.
You like that idea? Okay.
Hey, it's a lot like soft tissue.
It is, and it could be a kid's arm.
Yeah, it got the point across.
Yeah.
There are force testers out there that would give you a pounds per foot reading on the pressure it takes to reverse it. They run about $60.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're out there. You can probably find them. I just did a search and they came up.
Yeah, but with that, the downward force is adjusted based on the track and the weight of the door. So you don't have a standard to compare that force to. It's not like there's X amount of force that the door needs for every single door. Every situation is different. That's why they have the adjustments on the motor. And then, Hollis, if it's okay, I just wanted to add one thing, to all the guys that are saying that they don't test the reverse for fear of causing damage. Going back to what I said earlier, the 2x4 method is literally in the instructions of like every manufacturer of a door motor. If you don't do something on an inspection for fear of causing damage, that's a slippery slope. I would counter that and ask, so then are you testing GFCIs? Because, as experienced home inspectors have had happen when you test. Sometimes they fail. Did you damage it, or did you discover a defect? Or are you testing overflow drains on tubs? Sometimes you test an overflow drain and go downstairs and there's water dripping out of a recessed light. Someone could argue you caused damage, but no, you're testing the device or the component as it was intended to be used. So careful not to do something just because you're worried about damaging it. If you're doing it as it's intended to be tested or intended to be used, you should be protected.
I think that's a good note to leave this
didn't
on.
keep me from having to buy a $700 door.
All right.
None of those
Okay.
arguments.
I think we're gonna leave it there. I think that's a good point. I understand that there are all kinds of caveats, but I think Ian makes a really good point that we need to continue this conversation. But I think this was a worthwhile discussion to have, and I don't begrudge anybody the right to act on the lessons they've learned. But at the same time, our client hired us to do a job, and if we didn't do the job out of fear of some kind of repercussion, maybe we need to give that some more thought. I don't know what the answer is. And I certainly don't mean to be, trash talking anybody who's did this 47% or whatever it was of people saying I don't do it. But on the other hand, if you're not doing it, what do you do? Right? Are you making sure that you explain to your client that you didn't do it and that it's important that it be done? And therefore, I recommend that you do it once you own the house, that you have the owner demonstrate it to you. I don't know. I don't know the answer. That's why I try to leave it open-ended. But I'm a little bit uncomfortable with this idea that we're just gonna write our own protocols based on, each individual one of us writing our own protocols based on concern about our own short-term financial interest.
Why would you not use the manufacturer's protocol for testing if it's a sticker on the door? I mean, that doesn't.
We just heard we just heard somebody say, I paid $750 for a door. That's the reason. I don't want to pay another $750 for another door. That's the answer to your question, Larry. And I think it's a legitimate position. All I'm saying is that there's a problem with it.
But
there's a problem both ways, and I don't know the answer.
Things can happen from removing electrical panels. Things can happen from walking next to something. I mean, there's always the chance that something can happen. But if it happens on the test and it's failing, and as a result of the failure, you're saving somebody from, a possible injury down the road, what's the problem? I mean, I don't see a problem there.
Yeah. So at this point, because I think two people said it tonight that they had firsthand knowledge of a death. That gives me four. In my discussion of garage doors over the last 28 years, I now have four people have told me, yes, I have a friend or family member or firsthand knowledge of someone who was killed by a garage door. Two of you guys said it tonight.
Hey, Hollis.
Yes.
One thing that maybe some people don't think about, that's to look at the door hardware, the operator hardware, look at all of it carefully, look at the hinges, and make sure there's nothing damaged, bent, broken, missing, safety wires, whatever, before pushing a button.
Yeah, if you can find something wrong with that door, you can then it's appropriate for you to say, I'm not going to test it. It's not safe to test. And therefore I recommend that you get a garage doorman technician out here to get it installed properly.
Yeah, that's correct. And Hollis, even if when I test doors, if I notice any of the panels are bent to begin with, I won't do the pressure reverse because they're high, much higher susceptible to damage.
Yeah, if there's any damage, if there's anything damaged, don't push the button.
Exactly.
Common
Exactly.
sense. We
Yeah, I think
we look at everything before we perform any kind of test. The garage door is simple, but I want to ask a question. I'd like to know, in using a 2x4 test, 2x4 flat, I'd like to know what kind of damage that caused to the door. Because all the door, there's only an inch and a half of space.
it's damaging the top panel now. Quite often it's damaging the top panel
No,
where
I'm
the arm
talking
is
about in the
pushing.
2x4 flat, though.
That's what I'm talking about. It
Okay.
damages the top panel where the arm is pushing, and it's also damaging the bottom panel where the two ends hit the floor and the middle is held up.